Hey everyone, welcome back to Masonzero MTG. Modern Horizons 2 is here, and I am very excited for it because it has a lot of awesome cards. I made another video about cards for the average cube, so including cards of all rarities, and there are some very powerful and fun cards in that list, and many more that couldn't even make it on the list. And some of those are here in the Pauper list, and you know, being a higher power level set, there's a lot of commons that are very exciting. The last Modern Horizons set had a lot of commons for our format, and this set is no different. So without further ado, let's get into my top 10. If you agree or disagree with any of my choices, please let me know in the comments below. Obviously, this list is centered around my concepts of cube, even though I try to be as general as possible. But I would love to hear your opinions, why you think I'm right or wrong, and what cards you're excited to play. So let's get into it. For starters, we have Landscaper Colossus, Mental Journey, World Weary, Battle Plan, and Orchard Strider. I like having a cycle of land cyclers in my Pauper cube, since there's kind of a lack of mana fixing at the common level. And of course, I like having cards that are 2 spells in 1. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you know I like modal spells. I'm currently running the Scourge cycle of cyclers, which actually only cycle for their corresponding basic land. For example, the white one cycles for a plains. And that's mostly because the ones that cycle for any basic land just haven't been very good. So let's go through the list and compare them to the original ones. The white one, Landscaper Colossus, is decent, but probably the worst of the bunch. I think it's about the same power level as the existing Gleam of Resistance, and it just kind of depends on your cube. I'm not sure which one I'm going to use. I'm probably going to keep Gleam. Mental Journey lets you draw 3 cards for 6 mana, which is miles better than Traumatic Visions, which counters a spell for 5 mana. This seems like an easy inclusion, with plenty of far better counter spells available. World Weary is pretty similar to Absorb Viz, I think, but is a much better card. Absorb Viz is a 7 mana spell that causes an 8-point life swing, which can be okay, but killing a big creature for a fairly reasonable 5 mana is going to be a much more useful effect most of the time. Battle Plan is an enchantment that buffs a creature every turn, which is arguably much better than the current option, Fiery Fall. I don't need to tell you how bad 5 damage for 6 mana is. Finally, we have Orchard Strider, which is a 6 mana 6/4 that creates 2 food tokens, compared to Sylvan Bounty, which just gains you 8 life. Even if you have a green life gain theme, Orchard Strider just seems like a much better option. So long story short, this cycle of basic land cyclers seems great, especially if you do like the idea of having these versatile options like I do. Obviously, we want them mostly for the cycling abilities, but we want the actual abilities printed on the card to at least be somewhat playable, and I think most of these are far more playable than their existing brethren. Break Ties. Break Ties might be the most flexible utility card I've ever seen at common, and you guys know how much I like flexibility. You can destroy an artifact, an enchantment, exile a card from a graveyard, or put a +1/+1 counter on a creature. All at instant speed, by the way. If you like this flexibility too, it could replace a disenchant type of card if you currently run one. This is one of those cards that I think any deck is fine with playing, even though it's just reactive. Sometimes I am scared to put generic things like this in my cube, but I think since this has so many modes, and it's pretty affordable, it's worth running. Dray Keeper. There aren't a lot of cards like Dray Keeper at common. It creates 2 tokens with the ability to buff them up, and give them menace. This is a cool black-green common that supports a token theme, and comes with its own small army of squirrels. With so many other squirrels now available, you can even add additional squirrels to make this card even better. I just think it's rare that a card can not only create tokens, but also grant them additional abilities, making this a potentially powerful card to round out a black-green creature-based deck. And besides, Pauper Cube is lacking impactful higher cost cards like this. Late to Dinner. Late to Dinner is a 4 mana white reanimation spell. If you like this effect, and especially if you currently run Resurrection, this is a strict upgrade. Compared to Resurrection, it is less color restrictive, and it comes with a food token for additional life gain or artifact synergy. Solid card if you're interested in this kind of effect. Lose Focus. You remember Mana Leak? This is it now. Feel old yet? Okay, so Lose Focus only charges an opponent 2 mana instead of Mana Leak's 3, making it much more like Quench or Miscalculation. But it can be replicated to counter more than 1 spell, which I think is great. Or if you want to tax your opponent 4 mana instead of 2, you can just replicate once and target the same spell again. So whether it's an entire stack that you want to counter, or your opponent has a lot of mana up to pay for your tax, Lose Focus has enough flexibility to certainly make it better than Quench, maybe make it better than Mana Leak, and possibly convince some people to run it instead of Miscalculation. Either way, I think it's worth running as a counterspell in your cube just for the flexibility. Phantasmal Dreadmaw. Phantasmal Dreadmaw is of course a joke card off of Colossal Dreadmaw, but it can be pretty decent. There aren't too many mono blue cards that have trample. In fact, only 4 blue commons have trample or can give themselves trample. Phantasmal Dreadmaw is pretty good at only 4 mana despite the fact that it dies easily. But a trampling 6/6 attacking on turn 5 is going to be a big surprise coming from a blue-based deck. The easy comparison is Scab Goliath, since it's a big blue creature with trample. It costs more and has an additional cost of exiling creature cards, which may or may not be super easy for blue in a normal cube. The only big beater I really see people running in blue is Striped Riverwinder, which this definitely doesn't replace, but maybe it can find its way as a surprising card in your cube. In order to tell if it's powerful or not, look for other cards you have that have free activated abilities or abilities that can just target a creature by tapping, things like that. They can take it out for almost no cost. Abundant Harvest. Abundant Harvest asks a simple question. Do you prefer this, or do you prefer Adventurous Impulse? These two cards are pretty similar. Abundant Harvest lets you get any non-land, not just creatures, but also makes it so that you can't accidentally whiff on it. You're guaranteed to get a card off of this, and it can get you out of some bad situations when you're low on lands. I like it a lot, and I think it's going to be better than Adventurous Impulse in most scenarios, especially since green decks will likely be creature heavy anyways. But if you do prefer Adventurous Impulse, I don't think anyone will give you a bad time. Foundry Helix. This might be the closest to Lightning Helix at common that we get to. There isn't really a card like this at common at the moment. The closest comparison I could find is probably Angelic Purge, which is significantly better, but this is still pretty good. It's best in cubes that support some sort of sacrifice or graveyard synergy to fully make use of sacrificing an artifact, and of course you need enough artifacts in your cube. Bannerhide Cruciak. Bannerhide Cruciak is another one of those commons that just has way too many words on it. I love these sets. A 4/4 with trample for 4 is totally fine, pretty solid for a common, but you can also discard it to permanently put 2 counters on a creature, then you can exile it from your graveyard to put 4 counters on a creature. It has modes for all stages of the game, whether you need to cast it for 2 mana, 4 mana, or 7 mana. Again, flexibility is king. Bone Shards. I really love Bone Shards, and I like this kind of effect in general. And every time they print it, it gets better. It started out simply with Bone Splinters, which trades a creature for a creature. Then we got Spark Harvest, that lets you pay 5 mana instead of sacrificing something, and it also hits Planeswalkers. Not that it matters for Pauper. Then we got Mutual Destruction, which lets you cast it as an instant if you had a permanent with Flash. Now we get possibly the best Bone Splinters variant. Not only does it destroy a creature or a Planeswalker, which again is irrelevant for our format, but instead of sacrificing a creature, you can also choose to discard a card. Normally Bone Splinters feels bad when you only have one big creature that you really care about, or don't have any creatures at all. Being able to spend 1 mana and discard something like an extra land or a card you can cast from your graveyard in exchange for killing any creature is really great, especially at common. Alright guys, that is my top 10 list of cards for Pauper Cube from Modern Horizons 2. Like I said, this set has some great cards in it. Of course, a lot of the exciting ones are at uncommon, rare, and mythic rare, but even the common slot is full of pretty exciting things. I, for one, am probably most excited about the common land cyclers, because I love that sort of flexibility. Having a strict upgrade to Resurrection is great. Loose Focus seems like a lot of fun. Bone Shards, another strict upgrade for Bone Splinters and the like. So lots of cards I'm very excited about and I'm going to be testing and running around with. Let me know what you're going to be testing and trying in your cube. And yeah, check out the other video if you haven't already. And once the next set comes out, which I'm sure will be before we know it, as it usually is, I'll be making another list. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you all in the next one.